Today's daf is daf Yud Beis, and we're studying the sugya now of Tofes l'balchov b'mokum shechav la'cherim, a machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanan in Masechet Peah. The issue is that we normally apply the principle of zachin li'adam shelo b'fanav. But if you have a number of people, a number of individuals who have the same right of zchia, and you decide to step in, jump into the fray, and be zoch on behalf of one of those various people, to the extent that you are cutting out the rest of the people, all of which have equal rights to that object. And the Gemara is assuming in the name of Rav Chizda that we have a machlokas on this very issue between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanan. Whereas Rabbi Eliezer says that you can be zocha on behalf of Ploni Almoni, choosing one of the various people. It's a case of matnas aniyim, so all the aniyim have equal rights to that leket shikha or peah, and you collect the leket shikha and peah. You're an ashir on behalf of one particular ani, your favorite ani. And Rabbi Eliezer says that's valid because zachin li'adam shelo b'fanav. Chachamim reject this, because they hold that Tofes l'balchov b'mokum shechav la'cherim, which literally means that, let's say, the lova owes money to many different malvim. He borrowed 1,000 from each of who knows how many people, and one person comes along and he wants to collect from the lova on behalf of one of the various malvim, to the exclusion and to the loss or detriment of the other malvim. And the Chachamim apparently are of the opinion that you cannot be zocha on behalf of someone through the principle of zachin li'adam shelo b'fanav at the expense of somebody else. And the Gemara rejects it. Amar Meimar ve'i teimar of Papa. And now we start our daf for today. Dilma lohi, the machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim in Peah is not interdependent with the machlokas about Tofes l'balchov. Ad kan lo kam Rabbi Eliezer hasam in Peah, when Rabbi Eliezer recognizes and validates an ashir to be zoche on behalf of one particular ani in the leket shikha peah to the expense and the loss of the other aniyim. El demigu di boy mafkele l'nechase v'havi ani v'chazile. Rabbi Eliezer applies a double migu in order to justify this halacha. Number one, the asher could make himself into an ani. All he has to do is being mafker his nechasim. And if he owns less than 200 zuz, then he's an ani. He has rights to the pay for himself. And now we can apply a second migu. If the ani wants to be zocha for himself, then he has rights to this peah, and therefore he can be zocha on behalf of another ani. So that's the double migu that Rabbi Eliezer stands on. And I remember that Reb Chaim Brisker has a lot of Torah on this double migu, how you combine two migus. But the basic idea is to give this person a yad for zchia in the matnas aniyim. And he has a yad for himself because he could become an ani. Avol hacha, but in terms of Tofes l'balchov mokum shechav la'cherim, lo, Rabbi Eliezer did not commit himself on that issue. And on the other hand, ad kan lo kamri Rabbanan hasam, why the Rabbanan exclude the possibility of an usher being zoch on behalf of one of the various aniyim? El dichsiv lo salakit. There's a lav in the Torah, in Parshas Emor, in the Parsha of Matnas Aniyim, and it says over there, v'leket ktsircha lo salakit. And this is a lav that addresses the usher. Lo ani v'lager la tazov oso. So that if an Ashir is Zoche in Peah, then he violates a lotas in the Torah. Again, you might say, well, forget about the lotas, he violates gzela. But the answer is, he's not stealing from any particular ani who owns the leket shikul peah, but rather it's hefker laniyim. So he would not necessarily violate the isur gzela, but he does violate an isur of lo salake. Is therefore lo salake lo li ani, the ashir is enjoined from being zoche in the peah on behalf of any ani. If he does so, he violates this law. And apparently the Chachamim rejected the migu of Rabbi Eliezer, or maybe the double migu of Rabbi Eliezer. Maybe one migu they could accept, but not two migus. Aval hacha lo. But here, in the case of Tofes L'Bal Chov, it could very possibly be that the Chachamim would hold that you can be Tofes L'Bal Chov, even though it's Chav L'Achrini. The Gemara now clarifies Rabbi Eliezer, Hai lo salake my ovidle. What does he do with the lav of lo salake? Doesn't he concede that there's a violation of the lav in the event that the ashir is zoche in the peah? And it's very interesting that the Gemara at this point is not bothered by the fact that, well, you know what? Rabbi Eliezer is building himself on a migu, meaning that the ashir is not violating the isur lo salake because he's not taking it for himself. He's taking it taka for an ani. But the Gemara right now is not validating that migu because the Torah says lo salake, and the prohibition applies to an ashir in the maisa likita. The Gemara answers me, Boile, what does Rabbi Eliezer do with the pasuk lo salake? Lahazir li ani al shalo. It means that, let's say an ani owns a field. Again, he probably doesn't own much of a field because his total assets are less than 200 zuz, but he owns a small patch. And in that patch, he's got peah. Again, you have to know a lot of the laws of peah here to understand, how an ani could be chayav in peah. But in any event, the Torah wants to say that the ani cannot collect his own peah. He's got peah standing in the corner of his field. And you might think, well, he's still an ani, let him take the peah for himself. But the halacha is no, he cannot take a peah for himself. And this seems to be a principle that operates throughout Zroim. Like, for example, a Levi is chayav in Meiser, let's say, but he cannot take the Maser for himself, even though he's a Levi. His chayav is to give it to someone else, or a Trumas Maser. Okay, now we begin to study a brand new sugya. And let me just give a little bit of an introduction to this new sugya that we're starting with. The Chachamim in our Mishnah made a fundamental distinction between get and shtar shichur. And that has to do with the principle, again, of Zoch L'Yodem Shelo B'Fanim. When a Baal gives a get to a Shliach, that Shliach could operate in one of two ways. He could either be a Shliach Le'holocha, in which case the get is not chal until it reaches the hands of the Isha, or he could be a Shliach Le'Kabbalah. Now, if we would assume that Zoch L'Yodem Shelo B'Fanim applies, then it's in the best interest of the Isha for the Shliach to make himself into a Shliach Kabbalah so that the Gershon is chal immediately. But the Chachamim say that for a woman to receive a get is not a zchus, it's a chov. So therefore the Shliach is at best a Shliach L'Holacha, but not a Shliach L'Kabbalah. which allows the Baal time to be choser bo and be mevatel the shlichus. However, in the case of get shichrur, the Chachamim say that the Eved has no, we're talking about an Eved Kanani, has no benefit by remaining an Eved. That's the sheet of the Chacham. Later on, we'll see that there is a line of reasoning that goes in the opposite direction. It's better for an Eved to be an Eved so you can hang around with the Shvachos. But the Gemara doesn't operate now with that principle. Now, you might ask the following question. Wait a minute. Are the Chachamim saying, therefore, that the Shliach, who is appointed by the Adon, the Rav, right, he can now make himself into a Shliach Kabbalah, and he could be Zocha on behalf of the Eved in such a way that he precludes the schus of the Adon from being Choser bo, because the Eved is already Meshuchar immediately when the get Shichur reaches the hands of the Shliach. And now the question arises, but wait a second. Isn't the Baal, the Adon, obligated to feed and support his Eved? And if so, wouldn't it be a hefsed and a chov for the Shliach to make himself into a self-appointed Shliach LeKabbalah and terminate the Avdus when the get reaches his hand? And the Chachamim say in the Mishnah, no, it's a schus and not a chova. Why? Shem yirtza shlo lazun rashoy. What do I mean? The Adon owns the Eved, and it's pure profit, no loss whatsoever. In the case of a marriage between a husband and wife, he has to support his wife. And although he has rights to collect her Maisi Yadayim, but nevertheless, he still remains obligated to support her. In the case of an Eved, he gets all the benefits. He collects the Maisi Yadayim. He collects the Maisi Yadayim of the Eved, and any manufacturing that the Eved does. Let's say the Eved, produces wool. Let's say he manufactures a garment out of wool, or he weaves something. So the Adon owns it. Kol mashikona Eved kona rabo, and the Adon could sell it on the open market. But the negative part, meaning the chiyuv mizonos, he doesn't have. He doesn't have to support the Eved. And in the language of the Mishnah, that's called the Yirtzeh Shelo Lozun Rashoy. So the Gemara says, Shmami, no, we see clearly from our Mishnah that if it's a schus for the Eved to go free, Yochel Arav Lomalo LeEved, Asei Imi Ve'eni Zoncha. I want you to do all the malacha that you're obligated, and Eved has to do all the malachas for his Adon without getting any benefits. The Adon could say, I'm not going to support you. Go and be machzer al psachim, go knock on doors and panhandle until you could find someone to give you tzedakah to support yourself. So the relationship of an Eved to an Adon is called gufo kanilo, and the Adon gets all the benefits without the negative. So therefore, if the Eved has an opportunity now to go free because the Adon gave a star shikra over to a shliach, that's exactly what we want to do on his benefit. So the Gemara says the following: No. Our Mishnah does not prove that very far out principle that an Adon has the right to say, "Asei imi v'yeni zoncha." Hacham mayaskinon the Amar late say masei yodayich or yodecha lim zonosecha. Go sell, says the Adon to the Eved, your produce, sell it on the open market, take the money and use it to support yourself. And that for sure the Adon is allowed to do. That's not an issue at all. Now the Masifta quotes Rabbi Nachum. Rabbi Nachum Persovich was the Rosh Hashiva in the Mir here in Yerushalayim. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was in Shanghai. That's how he survived the Holocaust. And he says the following: even according to the original Havamina of the Gemara, that a Rav could say to his Eved, Asei mi ve'eni zoncha, he concedes that according to the Etzem Hadin, The Adon is not allowed to say to the Eved, I'm going to take all your Maaseh Yadayim and I'm not going to support you. The machlokas here in the two deis in the Gemara and the Shaklatari back and forth is when the Adon could say to the Eved, you know what? You go and support yourself from another source, meaning go out and be machzir al psochim to bring your mizonos. And in event that you cannot successfully do so, then ha'adon atzmo chayav litein lo mizonosov. So the machlokas, according to Rabbi Nachum, is the following. What is the nature of kinyoni avdus that the Adon has in the Eved? Does he have his chus to be mishabed bo ad kedei kach that he can say to him, go be machzer al psochim, or not? Now, we have to add one other point. It would seem that from the get-go, the Adon is definitely chayiv in mizonos, but he has a right to say, say maaseh yadecha limzonosecha. In other words, he could be mafkia from himself, the Adon, his chiyuv mizonos. But let's say he didn't say and declare, let's say, I should say, in the case of an Eved, maaseh yadecha limzonosecha, that he's chayiv lozunis es avdo. In other words, as long as he didn't declare it, say maaseh yadecha limzonosecha, then the maaseh yadayim of the Eved are knuyim to the Adon, and since the Adon has a schus in the maaseh yadayim of the Eved, then he's chayiv tmuratze b'mizonosah. But if he says, according to one man the Yomi, say maaseh yadecha limzonosecha, he reveals his das that, you know what, I'm not going to take your maaseh yadayim, you're on your own, and if I'm not chayiv to support you, then you have to support yourself. So if I'm not going to retain my rights to collect your produce or whatever income you get, then my buddy, my friend, my Eved, Tuviyavdi, go ahead and support yourself. But if he doesn't do so, and he doesn't take away and uproot his rights to the maaseh yadayim of the Eved, then enochinami, he's certainly chayav in the mizonos of his Eved. So that's the Gemara's dechir, that the Adon does not have the right, perhaps, again, this one man the Omar, to maintain his rights to the maaseh yadayim of the Eved, and at the same time exempt himself from mizonos and tell the Eved to go fend for yourself. But there was another man the Omar who says no, that the Adon has rights to exempt himself from mizonos, even as he retains his ownership rights on the maaseh yadayim. So Gemara asks the following question. Why not assume a parallel, an equation or an analogy between Eved and Isha? Tekavasi gabi Isha. What would be the law gabi Isha? Can a man say to his wife, I'm going to continue receiving your salary check, your maaseh yadayim, and you go support yourself to get the best of both worlds? Tekavasi gabi Isha di omala sei maaseh yadayim zonosayich. In the case of an Isha, if the Baal doesn't want to support his wife, and he says, you know, I'm not going to support you, he's not allowed to do that. He has an obligation to support his wife. If, on the other hand, she has enough money of an income to support herself, he has a right to say, okay, you keep your income, I'm not going to collect it, and use that money to support yourself. So the Gemara asks, Ve'isha Milo, why can't the Baal set up this arrangement? And the Gemara answers, Isha bidlo safka. The reason why the Baal cannot say to his wife, keep your Maisi Yadayim and I don't have to support you, is only because she cannot afford, based on her income, to support herself. That's called the low safka. So the Rabbanan said that the Chachamim, that the Baal has no right to say to her, you know what? I'm not going to add mizonos to make up the increment, to make up the difference, but he has to support his wife. No way, no how. Unless, again, she has a salary that exceeds beyond her mizonos. So the Gemara asks the following question now. Now that you've explained that when the Chacham said that a man cannot remove himself from his obligation to support his wife in a case where she doesn't have enough Maisi Yadayim to cover her mizonos, then the Gemara asks, then Eved Nami B'Lo Sapik. When the Chachamim say regarding an Eved that it's a zchus for the Eved to have his avdus terminated because the Baal, the Adon, has the right to say, I'm not going to support you, Nami B'Lo Sapik. Maybe we should assume it's a case where the Maisi Yadayim of the Eved is not enough to cover his mizonos. So the Mishnah is telling us that the Adon doesn't have to add mizonos mishalo. So again, it's a case where, let's get the facts on the ground. The Maisi Yadayim of the Eved reaches X, and the mizonos is X plus Y, so it's more. And the Mishnah is telling me that the Adon in this case could say to the Eved, you know what, you're not a very good worker. You know, if I had to hire you, what am I, nuts? I'm going to hire you, and I'm going to spend more money. I'm going to buy you as an Eved. I could end up spending more money to support you than what you could even bring in. And that's called, in the language of the Shas, bidlo sapik. That the Maisi Yadayim of the Eved are less than the mizonos. And the Mishnah is telling you that the Adon is not obligated to add extra money for the mizonos. So then if that be the case, we have to again ask the question, why is the din of an Eved different than the din of an Isha? Because we said with regard to Isha below Safka, in that case, the Chacham say he's not allowed to say, well, you know what, you support yourself. She doesn't have enough money and income to support herself. So why not apply the same logic to an Eved? Why is it that in the case of the Eved, the Adon could say, you know what, go support yourself. And the increment, I'm not going to pay from my pocket to make up for your mizonos. Go ahead and be machzor al psachim. So the Gemara answers the following in my introduction. The kinyan that an Adon has on an Eved is a kinyan mamon, and it has to be worth it for him. The kinyan that he has on an Isha is a kinyan Isa, but he doesn't have a kinyan mamon. Is therefore avda dinahom krese lo shavya lemori lemarasa lemay mitzvah. An Eved whose income, his work, is not equal to the price of bread, nahom is bread, for which he has to fill up his belly, is lemore lemarase lemay mizboy. Why does his Adon or his gvirto, meaning the female owner of the, why should they be spending money out of their pocket on mizonos when the revach, when their profit level for the Maisi Yadayim is less than the mizonos? Therefore, the Adon cannot be chayav to take a loss out of pocket and to add to the Eved money so that he can support himself. Let the Eved go around and collect tzedakah to make up the difference between his Maisi Yadayim and his mizonos. But in the case of an Isha, the Chacham established through the Ksuba an absolute obligation to support his wife, even if it means that the support exceeds beyond the Maisi Yadayim. Toshma. Now the Gemara wants to know, do we have a proof perhaps that an Adon is allowed to say to his Eved, I say, me, I want to collect your Maisi Yadayim, I don't have to support you. Eved shekol lori miklat So an Eved killed someone b'shogeg. And we have to emphasize here that an Eved has the status of a Yisrael. He has a partial gerus. He's chayav based on Xer Shov Lo in mitzvahs like an Isha. And he's chayav to go into Golus. The din of Golus applies to a man and a woman alike if they killed someone b'shogeg. But ein rabo chayav lazuno. Now, what does that mean? It seems like because the Eved killed someone, therefore the Adon is parted from Mizonos. But right now the Gemara thinks that this is just not an exception to the rule, but rather a rule, which means that a Rav is not chayav Mizonos of his Eved. But at the same time, he gets all the benefits, as we said earlier, and he collects the Maisi Yadayim. Shmamina, Yochol, Rav, Lomer, Leved. I say, I don't understand this Havamina, which the Gemara is going to now reject, but what was the Havamina? Why did the Brisa formulate this in the case of a Horig B'Shogeg? In any event, the Gemara rejects this raya for a different reason. The Adon up front is obligated to support his Eved. In this particular case, he's not chayav lazuno because he told the Eved, you know what? You've got Maisi Yadayim, sell your Maisi Yadayim on the open market, and then you'll support yourself. And if you don't have enough money to support yourself, that's your problem. Frekti Gemara, if this be the case, that we're talking about a case where an Adon said to the Eved, say Maisi Yadayim from Zonosayach, is Maisi Yodav Amay L'Rabba. Why does the Mishnah, or I should say the Brisa, why does it say that the Maisi Yadayim go to the Rav? What do you mean? If he said, say Maisi Yadayim, then he gave up on his rights to the Maisi Yadayim. And the Gemara answers, La Dofa. An Eved has a schus to demand mizonos, according to this Gemara's slug up, from his Maisi Yadayim. And when the Brisa says that his Maisi Yadayim go to the Adon, that's called Hadafa. That means that it's the exact opposite of what we spoke about before, but below Sapik. Now we're going to talk about a scenario in which the Maisi Yadayim exceed beyond the mizonos. And the Brisa says that increment of Maisi Yadayim above and beyond the mizonos, the Adon has rights to collect that Maisi Yadayim. So Gemara says Hadofa Pshita. I mean, do I need the Brisa to teach me this halach of Hadofa? And the Gemara answers, you know what? This din of Hadofa, that this Hadofa accrues to the Adon, is not such a poshet din. Why not? Ma'al Desema, I might have entertained the idea that even Hadofa belongs to the Eved. Why? Came under Chilesle lo Yoevle. If the Eved is not getting mizonos, and his Maisi Yadayim are not enough to cover his mizonos, lo Yoevle, the Adon is not chayav to take out money from his pocket to add to the mizonos, is therefore in the opposite case, ki isle, when the Eved has an odef on his mizonos, nami lo lishkol minei. The Adon doesn't have rights to get the Adofa. The Eved could, grab on and maintain possession over the Adofa, because maybe today he has Adofa, but maybe tomorrow he won't have Adofa. He won't have enough money to support himself. It's called mashmallah, and therefore I need the Brisa to teach me that Adofa absolutely goes to the Adon. So now the Gemara is going to ask our question: why did the Brisa frame it in terms of a case of an Adon who killed someone b'shogeg, and he had to be goled to the Miklat? L'chora, the Tana of this Brisa should have told us that an Adon is the right to say to the Eved, say v'tazun atzmecha, take your Maisi Yadayim and support yourself. In a general sense, to every Eved. Why focus specifically on an Eved who's chayav golos? And the Gemara answers, I would have thought that since the Torah says in the 4th chapter of Devarim, it says, "V'nosal achas min ha'ormei v'chai." Emphasis on the word v'chai. Ovid lechiyusa tfei. We have to go beyond, above and beyond for rotzech b'shkoga to guarantee him chiyusa. So when an Eved who went into Ir Miklat, and we want to give him a more comfortable kind of chiyus, and that goes beyond a regular Eved, so therefore let's allow him to take the hadafa, the increment of the Maisi Yadayim beyond the Mizonos Kamash B'Lo. No. The Bryce wants to tell you that even in the case of an Eved who went into Ir Miklat, he was Golet, and there's a mitzvah v'chai, nevertheless the hadafa always goes to the Adon, and he doesn't have to give it to the Eved. So the Gemara asks, wait a second. I'm going to prove to you from the next part of this brisa, the safe of this brisa, that we're not talking about a case of an Adon who said to the Eved, say, Maisi Yadechel Mzonosech. But in the Ketani Sefer, it says in the Sefer, Avol Isha Shegol Soli Ori Miklat. If a husband is married to a woman who unintentionally killed someone, and therefore she has to go into Gol Soli Miklat, Baila Chayav B'Zonoseh. The Bryce wants to say that Dafka, in the case of an Isha, despite the fact that she's Gola, nevertheless the Baal remains obligated in his support to his wife, Michlal, implying to Lo Omar La, it was not a case where he said to her, Tzei Maise Yodayech Limzonosayach, Tzei Omar La, if he had said to her, Tzei Maise Yodayech Limzonosayach, then Baila Maichayav. Why does the Baal have an obligation to continue to support his wife in the Miklat? Let her support herself from Maisi Yadayim. Umi the Sefer, and if the Sefer is talking about in the case of an Isha, the Baal did not say that Tzei Maisi Yadayim Zonosayach, and that's why the Brisa says in the Sefer that he's Chayav B'Zonos, is Reisha Nami Delo Amarle. Then there should be a symmetrical position of the Reisha and the Sefer, and we're talking about a case where the Adon did not say to the Eved, say Maisi Yodayach Limzonosayach. And once again, we go back to our original proof from this brisa that the Adon has a right to say to his Eved, Asei imi v'eini zoncha. I want your Maisi Yodayim. I will continue to put them into my bank account, and I'm not going to support you. So the Gemara says no. Li olam. Let's go back to the Sefer. Di Omar La. Okay, I'm sorry. This is the Reisha still, and then we'll get to the Sefer. The Omar Le, the Adon says to the Eved, say Maisi Yodayech B'Limzonosech. And in that sense, the Reisha is parallel to the Sefer, and the Baal said to his wife in the Sefer, Tzei Maisi Yodayech Limzonosayach. So wait a minute. The Brisa says that the Baal is chayav b'mizonos. If the Baal said to his wife, "Tzei Maisi Yadayach," you support yourself based on your income. So why does the Brisa say that the Baal continues to be chayav to mizonos? The Isha b'lo safka, because the case where her Maisi Yadayim reaches a number that's lower than her mizonos, and therefore the Brisa establishes in the Sefer that the Baal has to continue to support his wife. He cannot say Sei Maisi Yodayech B'Limzonosayach, because the Maisi Yodayech is not enough to cover a mizonos. So now the Gemara wants to prove from the end of this brisa that it's impossible to say that we're talking about a case of Bidalo Safka. Why? The V'ha Sefer. The Amar Allah, if the Baal says to his wife, Tzei Maisi Yodayech B'Limzonosayach, Rashai. So the Brisa at the end is adding a scenario where the Baal said to his wife, so it seems like until we get to that last part of the Brisa, then we're talking about a case where the Baal did not say to his wife, and therefore he continues, even in the Ir Mikla, to be obligated into support of his wife. And in the Reisha, the Brisa wants to tell me the din that the Baal does not have rights to say to his wife, the Reisha, the Sefer, the Baal does not have rights to say to his wife, Asi imi v'eni zonov. Yeah, I want to get your Masechet, but I'm not going to support you. And the Sefer is teaching me in this brisa that nevertheless the Baal does have rights to say to his wife, support yourself with your income. So the Gemara now rejects this. In truth, even the Reish is talking about a case where the Baal said to his wife, why did the Tan only mention that in the Sefer? The im amar lo, etc. Hachikamer. This is what the Bryce has in mind. The im aspekes, if Masechet Yadayim is enough to cover a mizonos, the amar lo, and in addition, the Baal said to his wife, Masechet Yadayim mizonosach rashoy, he's allowed to do so. And the difference between the Reish and the Sefer is that the Reish is talking about a case of lo masafka, and the Sefer is a case of maspekes. So the Gemara asks, Maspekes Maila Meimar, if she has enough money coming in because she's a hotshot lawyer and she's making a great income, then for sure he doesn't have to support his wife. He just says to her, and that's a basic principle in Ksuba. So Maila Meimar, what did the Brisa come to teach me? Oh, so the Gemara says it's not so poshut that the Baal could say to his wife, why? Maudas Sema, I would have entertained the idea that Kol Kvuda Basmela Pnima, the Posuk in Tehillim Mem Hey says that a woman should be Bifnim, Pnima, and that's the way a princess lives in the castle of her father. And therefore, she doesn't have to go out and work on the market, because Bnos Yisrael are Bnos Malachim. They are called the daughters of kings. And the Baal in a Havamina would have said, go out and work, and he doesn't have rights to demand that she go out and work and support herself. Therefore, the Tan has to teach me that if her Masechet Yadayim are enough to support her, the Baal could say to her, go out and work. Now the Gemara goes back to the din and the issue about whether an Adon could say to his Eved, Asay imi v'yedi zoncha. Lema ketanoi, shall we say that this is in fact the subject of Machlokas Tanoi? Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer, Yachol ha'eved lo melarabo b'shnei abatzores. We're talking about very expensive food on the market because there's very little limited supply on the market during these drought years. O parnaseni o hotzieni lecherus. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says that the Eved has a right to say, either you support me, I can't support myself at these wild prices, or give me a get shichur and cut me loose. According to Chachamim, the Eved cannot force the hand of his Adon to support him during Shnei Habatzores, or give him a get shichur, but rather the Adon could continue to be Meshabi the Eved without even being Mefranesim. And he could say to him, you know what? Go out and collect stock in order to support yourself. My lab mifli. Isn't this exactly our machlokas? Rav Shimon Gamliel and Chacham are arguing. The Mar Sova, the Chacham hold Yachol. The Adon has rights to the Masechet Yadayim of the Eved, and he doesn't have to support him. He can tell the Eved to go fly kite and find yourself a charity group. And therefore, the Eved cannot force the hand of the Adon during Shnei Habatzores to be Motzil Lecherus in order for it to Mefaris. Umar's Baruch Shimon Gamliel Sovar Eino Yochel. Right? The Adon does not have rights to say to the Eved, you know what? Go work, support yourself, collect stock if you need. So I'm not going to support you. So the Gemara says V'tizbra. Now the Gemara wants to reject this, and it's not possible to say that the machlokas, the subject here of the machlokas between Rav Shimon Gamliel and Chachamim, is whether or not an Adon has the right to say to his Eved, "Asay imi v'eni zoncha v'tizbra." Are you telling me that we're talking about a case where the Adon says to the Eved, Asei michveini zoncha, and that's the machlokas Reb Shimon Gamliel. Hi, that which Reb Shimon Gamliel says over here, that an Eved could demand from his Adon, O parnaseni, O hatziyeni, O tziyeni lecherus, that's not really a taina miduyekes. The Eved doesn't demand that the Adon is going to be meshacher him, but rather he's demanding parnasa. O parnaseni, either you support me, O tenli maisi yoda parnasasi. Me boil it. You should have said that the Eved could demand from his Adon, either support me, or give me the opportunity, the possibility of selling my Maisi Yadayim on the open market. So it can't be that we're talking about a machlokes of Shimon Gamliel and Chachamim of O parnaseni o hatzieni lecherus in the literal sense. The Eved is not demanding that the Adon be meshacher him, but rather he's demanding that he receives parnasa. And if he doesn't receive parnasa, at least let him pocket his own income. The Od, and furthermore, Maishno b'shnei b'tzares. Why does this brisa formulate this machlokes between Reb Shimon Gamliel and Chachamim in the case of shnei b'tzares? Ella, but rather, Chacham Mayaskina, the brisa is addressing the following scenario: the Amalei say Maisi Yadayich Lemzonosayich. He says to the Eved, you know what? Go support yourself. Take the money that you earn and support yourself. B'shnei b'tzares lo tzapek. Certainly during these high inflation years, there's not going to be enough in the Maisi Yadayim of the Eved to support himself. So Shimon Gamliel Savar, O parnaseni o tziyeni lecherus, ki hechi dechazuli in shei u'merachmim alai. Once he'll be meshacher, I'll be a full-fledged Jew. My gerus will be complete, and the people will have compassion on me, and they'll give me tzedakah, Rabbanan Savri. The Eved does not have a right to say to the Adon, either you support me or cut the umbilical cord and be meshacher me. The time of the Eved, that if you'll be meshacher, I'll be able to collect tzedakah. No, man derachma bnei chori, I have it nami rachma. Included in v'cheachicha imach is the Eved. The Eved is chayav mitzvahs ki isha has kedushas Yisrael, and those who give charity will give charity, support the Eved. Tashmad yom harav hamagdish yedei avdo. If he takes a what's called nidrei hegdish, and he makes the Maisi Yadayim. Again, he can't make the Maisi Yadayim into hegdish because that's davar shelo b'leil. But he says, "I'm being magdish the hands of my Eved, and all the produce of my Eved will be hegdish." And let's say the Adon is not supporting the Eved. Oso ha'Eved lo v'viocha v'osa uporea. The most that the Eved is going to borrow in order to purchase mizonos, and on the other hand, the malacha that the Eved does, he'll take that income of malacha and he'll use it to pay up the chov that he took from someone or many people in order to buy mizonos. So from the fact that the Adon could be magdish the Maisi Yadei Avdo, even though he's not supporting him, because it says v'osa uporea, so we see that the Maisi Yadayim of the Eved, which the Adon in this scenario was magdish, belonged to the Adon. He could be magdish it even though he's not supporting the Eved. Shmami no yochel arav lo meli Eved, asei imi v'eni zoncha. And Gemara rechecks Chacham Mayaskinon. What's the case that we're dealing with? The Rav could be Magdish the Maisi Yadayim of his Eved, the Mailalo Mizonos. It's a case where he is supporting the Eved. And therefore the Maisi Yadayim belong to the Adon, and he could be Magdish them. No, Ihachi, Lamai. Oh, just excuse me for one split second, sorry. Nachi. Hi, good morning. Thanks for returning my call.